Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutchgreybeard. This channel is about my journey as a reader into the genre of fantasy. My love for fantasy was rekindled at the beginning of 2023. Before that, I mainly read literary fiction, some thrillers and science fiction books, and lots of non-fiction such as biographies, spiritually oriented books and essays on various subjects. It is true that I now mainly read fantasy, but that does not define me as a reader. So every now and then I post a video about my other reading interests. These I call On the Side. They may give you some idea of who this Dutchgreybeard is and where his reading roots lie. My On the Side videos are not about fantasy, but they are always about books. With that being said, I want to present you the second episode of On the Side called A Glimpse into the Other Realm. In 2012, I became acquainted with the life of Edgar Casey, a remarkable seer who lived from 1877 till 1945. This was for me the starting point for reading books that qualify as spiritual. Before diving into Anita Moorjani, the subject of this episode of On the Side, a few words about Edgar Casey. He was a simple American farmer's son who, almost against his will, became a very important seer. Amidst so many charlatans and frauds, it's not easy to believe in someone's authenticity. But the story of Casey's life leaves no doubt in my mind that his so-called readings are genuine. To me, Casey's ability proves at least that there is more between heaven and earth. Edgar Casey never sought after publicity. Up until the end of his life, he never even accepted money as payment for his readings. Certainly in the beginning, he tried almost everything to walk away from his gift, because it actually frightened him. During his readings, which he gave while in trance, it was as if he was quoting from a universal mind. After each reading, Casey had no idea what he had said. The bulk are medical diagnoses, which are without exception correct. When a person was beyond help, Casey would state, "This soul is ready to move on." This is amazing, but what fascinates me even more about Casey are his so-called life readings, in which he answers questions about the real nature of the soul and our purpose here on earth. I'll leave it at that for now, as far as Edgar Casey goes. The main subject of this On the Side is Anita Moorjani. I read her book, Dying to Be Me, in August 2021, and I was completely blown away by her story. I'd read more books on near-death experience. A few of them are interesting, but others lose themselves in the entire biblical scenery, which is not what I'm looking for. But this one, by Anita Moorjani, is exceptionally impressive. First off, it's very well written, which is a relief. And she doesn't preach or evangelizes. Right away in her foreword, she wins me over. I'm not claiming to know any universal or scientific truths, or to be anyone's spiritual guru. Spiritual books that tell me how things are usually irritate me, and books that tell me how I should live or solve any of my problems are even worse. Thankfully, Moorjani is not a guru, she just tells us her story, which is nothing other than miraculous. She tells how she grew up in Hong Kong in an Indian family. She speaks fluent Cantonese, Sindhi and English, and was immersed in the cultural specificities associated with those languages, China, India and the Western world. In those cultures, it's vital to appease others and to mostly ignore your own needs. Ultimately, in her own view, partly because she is a woman, she never met expectations. I felt powerless and worthless. I felt like such a failure. It was all an act. I knew I'd never truly be what they wanted me to be. I'd always fall short. I regretted everything about myself. Even after Moorjani finds Danny, her true love, and marries him, she remains super insecure and anxious. I still found myself thinking that it was only a matter of time before he discovered the inherent flaws within me. After a good friend of hers is diagnosed with cancer, she becomes fearful that she too will contract the disease. She reads books about cancer and does everything she can to avoid foods and other things that are said to be carcinogenic. Ultimately, she says, I started to fear life itself. Then the long-feared thing happens. She is diagnosed with lymphomia, which is cancer in the lymphatic system. From that moment on, her life consists of a roller coaster between the emotions of anger, panic, frustration, fear, and despair. She does everything she can to recover from her illness, to no avail. Moorjani seriously weakens. She needs extra oxygen to breathe and can only move in a wheelchair. On February 2nd in 2006, almost 4 years after the diagnosis, she loses consciousness, and although it's clear that she will die, her husband rushes her to the hospital. The attending physician says to Danny, your wife's heart may still be beating, but she's not really in there. It is too late to save her. In her comatose state, Moorjani has a near-death experience. She finds herself in another reality and experiences typical NDE things, such as 360-degree vision, feeling of redemption, weightlessness, timelessness, and the realization that she is one with everything and everyone. She hears conversations from doctors in the hallway and sees her brother sitting on a plane. He's on his way to be with his dying sister in Hong Kong. During her presence in what she calls the other realm, she realizes a few things. God is not a being, but a state of being, and I was now that state of being. I understood that I owed it to myself, to everyone I met, and to life itself, to always be an expression of my own unique essence. I became aware that we're all connected. I also understood that the cancer was not some punishment. Where I was at that point in time was a culmination of every decision, every choice, and every thought of my entire life. She understands that she can still return to life. Initially, she doesn't want to return to her painful and completely emaciated body, but she also knows that whatever was feeding her cancer cells would be gone, and she would be cured. More than 30 hours after slipping into a coma, she opens her eyes again. Her organs had started working again. Within 5 days, Moorjani was able to move from the ICU to a regular hospital room. She had become a disruptive presence in the ICU because she listened to a lot of music and laughed a lot. 6 days after she left the ICU, a bone marrow biopsy was performed. It showed that her bone marrow was free of cancer. The doctors cannot believe it and insist on more tests. Moorjani doesn't want that, but the doctors persist. Finally, she says, "Do what you need to do, but I want you to know that you're doing this to convince yourself. I already know the results." When she was admitted on February 2nd, an MRI scan had been made. That scan shows that her entire body consists of cancerous tumors. The doctor who performs a lymph node biopsy hangs the scan from February 2nd next to the new results. There is no longer any cancer to be seen. Perplexed, he calls another doctor. 5 weeks after her emergency admission, Moorjani is released from the hospital. The many wounds that she had developed on her body during her illness also healed on their own. An appointment had already been made for plastic surgery, but that no longer appears necessary. Moorjani is a medical miracle. From here, the book becomes even more interesting for me than it already was. In what follows, she describes what this NDE and her miraculous healing did to her. In it, she says many wise things, from which everyone, whatever you want to believe about her story, can gain something of value. Some quotes. I felt that people were taking life and their problems too seriously. It seemed important to have fun and laugh. I was no longer able to view the world in terms of us and them, that is, victims and perpetrators. There is no them. It is all us. We're all one, product of our own creation, of all our thoughts, actions, and beliefs. We get caught up in the illusion of separation and can't see that happiness and sadness go hand in hand, like light and dark, yin and yang. Our sense of disconnection is simply part of the illusion of duality that makes it difficult to see oneness forming out of perceived separation. Previously, when I felt lost, one of the first things I did was to search outside for answers. I looked for books, teachers and gurus in the hope that they'd provide me with the ever-elusive solution. But I only ended up feeling even more adrift because I was giving my own power away again and again. Once she is fully recovered, Anita Moorjani tries to find out why she was able to recover from cancer so quickly. During her illness, she experienced the horror of her deteriorating body every day. She did everything she could to get better. For example, she visited spiritual healing groups. There she was told that this disease was her own choice, which frustrated her and made her even more anxious. Ultimately, everything exhausts her, and she is left with incomprehension. Why is this happening to her? But when it finally became too difficult to hang on anymore, I let go. There was a total internal release. After cancer ravaging my body for more than 4 years, I was simply too weak to hold on. So I surrendered. At that moment, she falls into a coma and experiences the extensive NDE. During her NDE, she understood that the cancer was not a punishment or anything like that. It was just my own energy, manifesting as cancer because my fears were not allowing me to express myself as the magnificent force I was meant to be. She emphasizes that her healing was not a matter of mind over matter, or the result of positive thinking or anything like that. I healed because my damaging thoughts were simply out of the way completely. So no, it wasn't my beliefs that caused me to heal. An absence of belief was required for my healing. Strongly held ideologies actually work against me. If I'm able to be comfortable with uncertainty, this opens me up to the realms of infinite possibilities. I'm at my strongest when I'm able to let go, when I suspend my beliefs as well as disbeliefs, and leave myself open to all possibilities. My sense is that the very act of needing certainty is a hindrance to experiencing greater levels of awareness. Her second book, What If This Is Heaven, was published in 2016, 4 years after Dying to Be Me. Moorjani tells about the time after her NDE and miraculous recovery, about her reintegration into life and finding out that it's not always easy to love yourself. From the moment her first book was published, a new life started for her in which she travels the globe to give talks and meet people. Through meetings with people, she explains why some of our firm beliefs truly are myths, like you get what you deserve, or spiritual people don't have egos, or we must always be positive. Apart from her amazing story and profound lessons, I appreciate Moorjani mainly because she doesn't behave like a guru. She doesn't act as if she knows and understands it all. In fact, she's not afraid to show that even she struggles at times with life. Still, in this book, intentionally or not, she often plays the role of advisor because people ask for her help. The fact that each chapter ends with tips and exercises amplifies the impression that Moorjani is leaning towards guruship a little bit. Also, the author too often repeats herself, and many pages are more filling than actually telling something. But these are minor flaws when set against the impact of her wisdom. In both her books, the author repeats again and again that self-love is the most important thing for someone's happiness. Despite this vision, I don't feel the need to change anyone else, let alone the world. Going out and changing things suggests I judge them to be wrong. Therefore, I need to fix them to match my own vision or ideology. Instead, everything is as it should be at this point in time. I know my only work is to be. So, no sermon or recommendations or step-by-step plans, although her second book makes a half-hearted attempt. I love her wise words that everyone will walk their own path and that ultimate freedom consists in letting go of dogmas or belief systems. At least, that's where Moorjani finds her ultimate freedom. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutchgreybeard.